Today, top-tier video games operate on Hollywood-level scales. Titles like Grand Theft Auto 6 or The Last of Us require hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands of developers, and years of labor to render hyper-realistic, fully functioning digital worlds. But 30 years ago, the entire industry was restricted to flat, pixelated sprites. In the early 1990s, the physical hardware of a console dictated exactly what a game could look like and how it could play. The undisputed king of that era was Nintendo, and their power stemmed directly from the plastic cartridge. Cartridges were expensive to manufacture and limited in storage space. By controlling the production and licensing of every single unit, Nintendo held absolute authority over third-party developers, dictating who could make games. Inside Sony, a hardware engineer named Ken Kutaragi saw a way past those limits. He secretly brokered a deal with Nintendo to develop a CD-ROM add-on for the Super Nintendo. It was a massive professional risk. Sony senior executives viewed video games as crude toys that would tarnish their high-end electronics brand. Kutaragi eventually secured approval from his CEO, but the project's success required Nintendo to loosen its grip. A CD-ROM format would allow developers to bypass the expensive cartridge manufacturing process entirely, threatening the primary mechanism Nintendo used to control the market. In June 1991, at the Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago, Sony took the stage and proudly announced their joint project to the world, a Super Nintendo with a built-in CD-ROM drive, branded as the PlayStation. The following morning, Nintendo held their own press conference. Without any warning to their partners, they publicly scrapped the Sony agreement and announced a separate deal with rival Philips. Nintendo executives realized that if Sony controlled the CD-ROM manufacturing, Sony would capture the licensing revenue. They cut Sony out to protect their margins. The public rejection left Kutaragi deeply humiliated. It also provoked a furious reaction from Sony's president, Norio Oga, who viewed the broken contract as an unforgivable insult to the company's honor. Oga authorized the secret PSX project, transforming a broken partnership into a multi-billion-dollar corporate offensive. Kutaragi focused on designing hardware that would make Nintendo's existing technology entirely obsolete. His first advantage was the CD-ROM. Instead of relying on the physical metal pins of a cartridge, CDs used optical lasers to read data. Pressing a disc cost pennies compared to the expensive plastics and silicon of a cartridge. More importantly, CDs held hundreds of times more data, providing the storage space for recorded voice acting, massive environments, and sweeping orchestral scores. To manage that data, Kutaragi utilized a 32-bit CPU, significantly increasing the console's processing capacity. This diagram illustrates what that means in practice. By doubling the width of the data pipeline from 16 to 32 bits, the console could push twice as much information through the processor at once, executing complex mathematical calculations at high speed. This combination of massive storage and high-speed processing allowed developers to scale their ambitions without hitting the hardware ceilings that had restricted game design for a decade. That raw processing power enabled the final strike against the 16-bit era, the 3D polygon. Instead of drawing flat 2D images, the processor generates a three-dimensional triangle, a polygon. The PlayStation's hardware calculated hundreds of thousands of these per second. By stitching them together, developers constructed fully rotating, immersive environments for games like Ridge Racer and Tekken. When the PlayStation launched in Japan in December 1994, it hit the market at a lower price point than its competitors. Sony also bypassed Nintendo's family-friendly image, marketing their machine directly to older teenagers and adults. Driven by lower manufacturing costs and 3D flexibility, third-party developers moved their support to Sony, dismantling Nintendo's cartridge monopoly within a single console generation. The market response was decisive. The original PlayStation outpaced veteran console makers Sega and Nintendo, eventually becoming the first home console in history to ship over 100 million units. The executives who once dismissed video games were forced to watch as Sony Computer Entertainment grew into the single most profitable division within the entire corporation. Over the next 3 decades, Sony iterated on Kutaragi's original blueprint. The jagged polygons of 1994 compounded generation after generation into the photorealistic capabilities of modern hardware. Today's gaming ecosystem is defined by cinematic storytelling and sits comfortably alongside film and television as a recognized medium for adults. The cinematic scale of the modern gaming industry was born from a calculated betrayal at a trade show and the high-stakes technological revenge that followed.